8. My star guest on the programme tonight is Nik Kershaw. We'll be chatting to Nik about his new music after we've heard a track from his latest 6-track EP. This is Nik Kershaw with The Chosen Ones.
Here we are safe, chosen ones.
Nik Kershaw with The Chosen Ones, which opens his new EP, These Little Things. Delighted to say that Nik joins us on the phone this evening. Hi, Nik.
Hi, Stephen. How are you?
Very well indeed. Are you keeping well?
Yeah, keeping very well, thanks. I can't complain.
Good. How have you coped, if that's the right word, with lockdown so far?
Well, you know, we're very lucky where we are in the middle of the countryside. We've got lots of long dog walks that we went on without having to bump into a soul, and yeah, we're very lucky out here. So it's not been too bad, and you know, I've been socially distancing most of my life, so I'm quite good at that.
Has this been an opportunity for you to spend more time on your music?
Well, that was the theory. Obviously, I could because the album was basically finished by the time lockdown came. I mean, we was just starting to make preparations for it to be released. But I did have, I have what I was going to do. My big plan was to go over loads of old demos from the 90s and that never saw the light of day, and kind of just sort of make an album out of them. But unfortunately, my studio's now in my cellar, and of course, then homeschooling came into it as well. So I've been a geography teacher, history teacher, and a maths teacher as well. So it's all kind of, you know, that all went by the wayside.
Are you a good teacher?
No, I've got renewed respect for both teachers and obviously anyone that works for the NHS. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's not an easy thing to do, especially with your own kids, because seem to have much more respect for the teachers than they do for their parents.
Did your days at Northgate High School in Ipswich come flooding back?
Well, it's amazing how much you do forget, you know, because you haven't used it at all over the years. And, you know, you wouldn't believe what 10-year-olds are doing in maths. And I'm going, yeah, cosines, tangents, what?
Hopefully it'll come in useful for them in the future. But I found a lot that I tried to learn at school I haven't had to deal with since, really.
Yeah, but that's the way. You don't know what you're going to need and what you won't. So
you don't.
I think it's just good to have a general kind of basic knowledge of everything you can.
So the new EP, as you're calling it, was in the can before lockdown began?
Well, there's a whole... Well, the story is this, really. There's a whole album in the can. The plan was to release the album in, about 3 weeks ago. But because of COVID, we couldn't get CDs and vinyl manufactured. So we first of all, we just put it on ice until at which point we can. And then we decided, well, let's just stick something out just for the fan base. So it's a 16-track album. So we stuck 6 tracks out digitally a couple of weeks ago. That's the EP. And hopefully we can now get stuff manufactured. So maybe we're looking at, I don't know, end of September maybe, they're talking about for the whole album release.
16 tracks, Nik. This is obviously a fertile time for you. Well,
I can't say it's happened quickly. It's happened. The last album was 2012, so 16 tracks in 8 years isn't quite
not prolific, no. But are these songs that you have been working on during that time, or has it all come together, all at once for you?
It went in fits and starts, really. There is one track on there from 2013. I actually sung at a festival in 2013. But that's the oldest thing on there. Yeah, I've had a few patches where, I'm complete barren years. Actually, I had a couple of years where nothing happened. I just kind of go into the studio and stare at the wall for 8 hours and come home again. But then I kind of went through a phase of just sitting down with an acoustic guitar and just writing a song a day, or just deciding I'm going to write a song a day, whether it's rubbish or not. I'll write and complete it and then forget about it, which I did. And then about 2 months later, I came back to those songs, and a good sort of 5 or 6 of them, I think, made it on the album.
And I take it you've got no one leaning on you to come up with new material. You do it at your own pace, your own time.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, and albums get released kind of by accident sometimes. They kind of, I mean, I wasn't really I wasn't focused on finishing an album until I kind of started talking to a friend of mine, a guy called Andrew Sunnox, who has a company called Audio Network, who in the past have just concentrated on production music, and I've done bits of music for him, for TV and film and stuff. But I was just talking to him about the sort of songs I was halfway through, and he said, well, play them to me when you're done. Let's see if we could do something with them. So in the end, it's Audio Network that are releasing the things, and they kind of drove at the end of the process. They kind of helped me finish it off.
And are you playing all the instruments yourself as well on the album?
A fair amount. I do. I recorded about 80% of it in my home studio, and just. But obviously, some things sound better. I'm not an expert in a lot of things, so yeah, we got drums and bass in. I did some of the bass. We got a few extra keyboards in, strings, brass, kitchen sink. All came at sort of Abbey when we went and did the sessions at Abbey Road, sort of end of last year.
Because it is a very big sound. Certainly, the tracks I've heard on the EP. Yeah,
no, it did kind of turn into a bit of a monster, which is you know, which is great. I mean, there is so much. My biggest problem is knowing when a record, a song is finished. You know, so there's always stuff you can put on top of it, and then someone says, how about strings? So you go, yeah, okay. So then there's strings on top of that, and there's horns on top of that, and it just becomes this huge thing.
Have you always been like that down the years?
Yeah, pretty much. The first two albums, I was kind of, Peter Collins kept me in order, producer, and I think the first album was recorded in 10 weeks, and the second album was recorded in about 8 weeks. And everything was quite and when you listen to those records, they're quite sparse, and there's a lot of space around everything, which is I wish I could do that, to be honest. But there's always the trouble is having too many ideas and just kind of thinking, well, everything you put on top, it seems to improve it or make it better. But you're not necessarily doing that. But producing yourself that's part of the problem.
And Nick, having enjoyed so much success down the years, do you still feel under any pressure to keep coming up with great songs?
No, I don't. I mean, I'm aware of the fact that there are people out there interested in hearing them, which is great. But as I said, it wouldn't have taken me 8 years if I thought I was under that much pressure. So no, it's good. I'm kind of enjoying life outside music. I mean, just pottering about in the garden and walking dogs and playing a bit of bad golf and stuff like that. And so I'm kind of. Yeah, music's hugely important, obviously, but I spent a fair bit of time in the past few years gigging. Obviously, that isn't happening at the moment. So no great pressure. There's never been, not since back in the day has there been a huge amount of pressure on me.
Good to hear that. We don't need pressure, certainly not at this time, that's for sure.
Yeah.
None of us need that. I've played The Chosen Ones, which opens the EP. Let me play the sort of focus track. I suppose we could call it the single, couldn't we? The Wind Will Blow?
You could. It hasn't been presented to radio or anything or pushed in that way, but it's I did kind of make a cheeky little video in the cellar and thought, well, let's make this a kind of a focus track. Yeah, absolutely.
I've got to make sure I play the right version of this because the original version on the EP has got a naughty word in, hasn't it?
Well, yeah, I just, do you know what? I've gone this far in my career without having an iTunes thing with a little red E next to it. So I thought,
yeah,
let's do that, shall we?
At least they're just marking up the individual tracks with explicit lyrics in now, and not sort of covering it the whole album with the word explicit, which
they kind of do actually. I was looking at it the other day, and if the iTunes listing for the EP, it says in brackets next to it explicit, which is it's a bit of a
bit misleading,
dramatic thing just for one word, which probably most people use 4 or 5 times a day at least.
Yeah, and the rest. Yeah. Well, let's play the radio edit of The Wind Will Blow. Then we'll talk some more, Nick.
The wind will blow.
The Wind Will Blow. More new music there from Nik Kershaw, who's guesting on the programme this evening. Nick, there's 6 songs on the EP, 16 on the forthcoming album. This really, for me, your voice is sounding stronger than ever on this one.
Thank you. I'm kind of lucky in that I've never. It's become easier, I think. When I first started making records, I really come from being a guitar player in a jazz fusion band, and I wasn't really used to being out front taking care of the vocals. So a lot of those early records are just me trying to find my voice, really. But I kind of over the years, you just kind of relax into it a bit more. And if you've got plenty of time to make a record, then you're going to spend plenty of time on the vocals, aren't you? So you're not going to chuck it out there with a dodgy old vocal on it. So I'm lucky. Some of my peers have struggled with vocal nodes and stuff like that over the years, but I've been okay with that. I think a lot of it's to do with gigging. And I took up in-ear monitoring quite early on when that sort of first came out. So I'm not straining against a lot of noise on stage and stuff. So I'm singing quite quietly into a microphone. I'm not screaming my head off. So that helps, I think, as well.
Yeah, because punters might think all the noise is coming off the stage towards them, but actually I've been on several stages doing some comparing and standing beside the stage, and it can get very loud up there.
It can, but as I said, it's got a lot better now. It depends. A lot of bands still kind of fight against using in-ear monitors, but I mean nowadays, especially with a lot of electronic bands and stuff, you can stand on stage and not hear anything. That's the bizarre thing. You just got a singer who's the only one actually making any acoustic noise. You've got someone with electric drums. You've got someone with electric keyboards, and nothing is actually coming out of any monitors on stage because they've all got it coming into their ears.
You must be missing the live work, Nick, like every musician in the land.
Yep. I'm surprising. I kind of surprise myself sometimes how much I do miss it, because I get very nervous about doing it, and that's the only thing I do get stressed about is doing gigs. But when I haven't got them to do, I'm kind of a bit lost. I've got to admit, this summer I should be, at least most weekends I'd be away somewhere on stage, smelling the grease paint and the roar of the crowd and stuff like that. So I do miss it, and I also miss my mates and my band members and the sort of camaraderie of being on tour and being on stage together.
Let's just talk about very briefly about your songwriting sort of technique, if I may. Do you tend to work on one song at a time, or have plenty of plates spinning at the same time?
I try and get a song finished in one go, but that doesn't always happen, and then it'll get stuck on a back burner, and then I'll come back to it. But generally speaking, I like to. I mean, there's a couple of songs on the album that were just incredibly difficult to nail, basically because they just wouldn't give up their secrets to me. Just as for instance, I'd have a backing track, and I'd have instrumentally, it would be all singing and dancing, but I just I couldn't find a focus for the lyric or anything, so it's kind of sat there, and you can spend like days trying to get it to happen, and it's not happening. You have to decide at some point just to let it go, and then come back to it, and then that's what I did on those 2 tracks. And
I take it there are songs, plenty of them probably, from down the years you've let go and have never gone back to?
Yeah, well, I was kind of almost referring to those earlier. There's a bunch of demos I made in the 90s, just for some songs for other people, some I wrote with other people. That I was checking out because they were all recorded onto a format called digital audio tape, or DAT, which doesn't really exist anymore, and nobody's got any DAT players. So I had to borrow a friend's DAT player to transfer it all to my computer. And I sort of discovered a few little gems there, and I thought, oh, blimey, I can't believe, that's worth people hearing.
Yeah, I'd look forward to hearing that when it's coming out. You're still planning to do that?
Yeah, I think so. That it just is sort of a nice little project to do. I don't have to. I mean, it's not going to be a big sort of all singing, all dancing release or anything. But I think various people are doing that themselves. So my friend Imogen Heap is kind of in the process of doing that, just finding old demos, and some old demos of songs that have been released, and also some bits and pieces of work that never quite made it out for whatever reason. And people are interested. So it's just a good little thing to. Since we seem to have the time to do it at the moment, to do that.
Yeah, and the fans love to hear that, don't they? I know that your first 2 albums for MCA came out as sort of deluxe editions with bonus tracks. So you don't mind that? Obviously not.
I don't. Yeah, I think it's you never want to show people what you can't do, or you don't want to play people your failures, but. And there are a few versions of those old songs, a few remixes and stuff that I absolutely loathed at the time, but kind of allowed them to surface because they're kind of, they're there, they exist, even though I wasn't totally responsible for them. But it always amazes me how much the sort of fan base is interested in some of these things, and it's just things that you discarded. But I think they're just more interested in the process and how a song came about.
Nick, we've run out of time, sadly. Lovely talking to you again. Congratulations on this EP. Some people might call it a mini album, but the full album is coming out later in the year, you say?
Yes, indeed. Well, thanks. Lovely talking to you, Stephen.
All the best, and let's hear the title track to your latest EP. This is These Little Things. Cheers, Nick.
Cheers.